Good evening.
My name is Brendan Miller, and I am legal counsel at Freedom Corp, which represents the protesters that were just in Ottawa in January and February. I don't represent anyone who was at Coutts.
Okay.
But I have a few questions for you.
Sure.
If we could please first bring up, and I know my friend was trying to avoid investigative privilege, and I have something that may assist and deal with that. Could we please bring up POE.HRF 0000008? So, sir, what this is it's a news article by CBC journalists Megan Grant and Rachel Ward. And I understand in September of this year, they brought an application and got access to some of the ITOs in the matter. And what this is a summary of what's in those ITOs. And for the folks at home, what that means is an information to obtain. It's an affidavit, an application from a police officer to obtain a search warrant. So I'm wondering if we can just scroll through this and if you could tell me, I'm not going to have to read it to you, just if the facts in here are accurate, because these are public facts and we don't need to worry about any form of issue with privilege.
So what I can tell you is that obviously I think you probably assume that I haven't read the ITOs and I'm not familiar with the facts in the ITOs. So I'm not sure how much I can assist to your question.
Well, maybe if I can, I guess I was going to try just to avoid having to go through it, and I'll see if this information I put to you, you can agree with. So I understand that for that operation, the undercover operation, there was a wiretap as well as a search warrant for the raids. Is that about, do you remember that? Or you're aware of that?
Yes.
Right. And there was two undercover officers from the RCMP embedded with these individuals who were eventually arrested. Is that fair?
Again, I'm going to refrain from getting into any of the details of that particular investigation as those charges are before the courts.
Right. And I understand that. And this is all from this article. I'm not taking it from anywhere else.
And I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
It is a news article, right? It's not from a court document itself. So again,
right.
my hesitancy.
Understood. But it's fair to say that the entire time with these individuals, almost from the get-go, the RCMP knew about them and they were on it. Is that fair?
I don't believe it's fair. That's not my understanding.
Okay, but from early February, is it fair, prior to their arrest, around February 5th, they were aware of these individuals, and the first one was arrested on the 13th, Mr. Lysak, and the remainder were arrested on the 14th.
No, we weren't aware of them on February 5th.
Okay, and can you give a date of when you did become aware of these individuals?
As I mentioned earlier, we became aware of potentially a cache of weapons on the 9th of February.
9th of February, all right. And according to this article, the two undercover officers essentially interacted with these gentlemen in a bar and were able to gather intel, and that led to the arrest and the raid on the house. Is that fair?
Again, I'm very hesitant to comment. Thank you.
Well, this article just outlines that, and I understand the ITOs are actually publicly available, so I'll try to get those for the commission so they just have a better understanding. I can probably get them from Alberta sometime next week. If we can bring up pb.nsc.can.0003039 _ rel.0001. Okay. Have you seen this document before?
I saw this document just very briefly before I took the stand here this evening.
Oh, okay. So you're familiar then with respect to this document being a memorandum, I believe, from your legal department in March of 2020 with respect to the Emergencies Act, but it's not speaking about a public order emergency. It's speaking about a public welfare emergency regarding COVID. Is that fair?
Again, I wouldn't say I'm familiar with the document, sir. I just had it put in front of me a short time ago.
Could we please scroll down, though? And to the second page, please. And the third page, I apologize. All right, and I just want to take you to the role of the RCMP. And my colleague with the CCF touched on this a bit with the commissioner, but this summarizes it nicely and given us an internal document. There at the second point, it states that under Section 18A of the RCMP Act and Section 14.1A of the RCMP regulations, RCMP members serving as peace officers have a duty to enforce the law. And it's speaking to orders invoked under the Emergencies Act. So is it fair to say that, I know you haven't been overly familiar with this document, but when there was the invocation of the Emergencies Act, was it your understanding that the RCMP, due to the operation of Section 18 of the Act and then of the RCMP Act and 14 of the RCMP regulation, was compelled as a matter of duty and law to carry out enforcing the orders that were passed under the Emergencies Act?
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
So the purpose that that's in there is that it's explaining that Section 18A of the RCMP Act and Section 14.1A of the RCMP regulation collectively require the duty to enforce the law. And when the order that is passed under the invocation is passed, that it's at least implicitly that those two sections of the RCMP Act and the section of the RCMP Act and the regulation compel the RCMP to carry out whatever is in those orders. Is that fair?
It seems to suggest that, yes.
Right.
Sorry.
And with
David Shrogi for the Government of Canada. Just a brief objection to that last question, and I understand that a response has been given. The witness has testified that he's not inherently familiar with the document, and the question that was just asked is to provide his opinion as to the purpose of certain sections of the document within a legal opinion. And given the testimony we've had, I'm not sure that's
right. I
an
understand.
entirely proper question to be asking this witness.
I'm going to move on. He's answered the question. So you've been an RCMP officer pretty much your whole entire career, I take it. You didn't have a second career before what you're doing.
That's correct.
Right. And you've worked in, you're essentially in the highest ranks of what you can do within the RCMP subject to becoming a full-time commissioner like Ms. Lucky. Is that fair?
Correct.
All right. Could you opine at all or give us evidence that when a regulation or an order is passed by an executive branch of government that requires certain things and certain conditions or puts restrictions on any area or individual, that due to the operation of Section 18A of the RCMP Act and Section 14.1A of the RCMP regulation, that essentially the passer of that regulation or the passer of that order is able to direct what the police are to do?
Sorry, I'm
Again.
just going to object again. These are legal interpretation questions that are being asked of the witness, and that's inappropriate in our view.
I'll rephrase. Have you had situations arise where there is orders in council or regulations that dictate whether specifically or whether implicitly that the RCMP has to do something with regards to carrying out that regulation or with regards to carrying out the order in council?
Nothing comes to mind at this particular moment.
Right. So it's a very, if there is an order or a regulation that would compel the RCMP to do something, that would be a very exceptional thing to interfere in the direction of policing. Is that fair?
you're asking a very hypothetical question. I don't know that I can comment.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.